Well, welcome back to Central Valley Talk. Briggs on Books is the show. You know, we used to be called Artists and Authors of the Central Valley of California, but because of COVID and things like that, we had to learn new technologies, and we discovered this Zoom technology, which has allowed us to reach out to authors and talk to authors from all over the world. Our next author is Joy Rocha, by the way, and she is the author of Transform from Victim to Warrior. And she has a story, an incredible story. And some of you viewers, I hope you can relate to it and get her book and kind of find somebody who's kind of been down the same path as you. Welcome, Joy. By the way, where are you, or can you tell us?
I live in Tualatin, Oregon, Mike, and thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. And kind of pretty heavy reading, and I got through some of the book. It's a little sad, and I don't know, would you call it a cautionary tale?
There is some caution in there. Near the end of the book, I have a page or two of what to look for when a client goes into therapy to be sure that they're being appropriate, the boundaries are being kept. And we know that there are thousands of people who have gone through this, and that's one of the reasons I decided to write the book.
Let me start with some of the book itself. You give the example of there was a famous person we all knew of, Sybil. They made a movie about Sybil. Yeah. Jessica Lange, I think, played the role. And what your book says is she didn't really have a split personality. She was just kind of playing along with a therapist who, you know, trying to make him happy, and the whole thing was a little phonied up. And maybe a misdiagnosis, or maybe her just trying to please the therapist. But you're saying this stuff goes on.
Absolutely. The woman who played Sybil, there is a book out now called Sybil Exposed, and the writer has interviewed Sybil. And what it was she had poor self-esteem. She had a lot of problems that I've had and depended on her therapist quite a bit. They bonded. Her therapist was very much interested in multiple personalities. And Sybil wanted to please her, so she created some for her.
Now, is your book about a unethical therapist, or about a misdiagnosis, or both?
I think it's both. I found out later on that he had quite a few other clients diagnosed the same, and we know that it's not a very common diagnosis.
And he had a bunch of them.
He also established a very personal thing with me, and that involved it too. He fell in love with me, you know, and I was looking so desperately for a man to show me love, because my father was not able to do that, that I would have been anything he wanted me to be.
Give us some background on your story, and tell us a little bit about the book.
I was raised by two parents that were not happy. My mother was mentally ill. I experienced and lived with anxiety and depression from the time I was a little girl. My mother always told me, you do not question authority. Don't ever question authority. Well, that stuck with me. I grew up in a very strict Sicilian family, and finally ran away from home at the age of 19. My mother called and reported me as running away, and the officer thought it was interesting because I was of legal age, so couldn't be running away. Anyway, after some other problems that happened, the marriage did not work. I had 3 babies in 5 years. I eventually wanted to work on the abuse that I had lived with. And so I sought out a therapy and I came across this therapist. And things started out pretty average, but it wasn't long before he started coaching me, wanting me. He was determined that my father had abused me. So after being coached from him and never questioning him because he was an authority, uh, I accused my father of abusing me, and my whole family backed out of my life. Um, During this time, he was also pushing that I had multiple personalities, and then that I had been a victim of satanic ritual abuse. Now, looking at me now and thinking as me now, that's totally crazy. And if somebody came into therapy with a good sense of themselves and a good ego, they would have walked out. In fact, I knew of some who did. But I needed him, and it was only I came up with 17 alters, different personalities. I tried to commit suicide at one point, and it was only after all the alters were integrated that and therapy stopped. Oh, and I was going to therapy 5 to 6 days a week, several hours a day. He stopped charging me. He wanted me to be there. We were going to do this. We were brought together to do this. After I stopped seeing him every day, I started looking over my journaling. He wanted me to look over my journaling because we were going to write a book together. Um, and after a while, I sat back and thought, this was not true. I didn't have 17 personalities. And I realized I had done it for him.
Yeah.
So then I needed to consider what I was going to do about that. And that was a hard one because I had, for 7 years, protected him from being caught being with no boundaries with me.
7 years. Yeah, boy. Now, are there, who needs to read this book, by the way? I mean, it's fascinating, so I'm going to read it. It's a fascinating story.
I think that anyone who has been victimized in any way in their life needs to read this book. When we talk about a warrior, I know that we think of a warrior as a soldier going out and at war and doing violent things. But I went into therapy with another therapist to get over the old therapist. Wow. And when she heard my story, she said, Joy, you are a warrior. And I understand it now. It's being a warrior is not about that, but about shedding that victim cloak and seeing ourselves as powerful and weird and worthy. And I think there are a lot of victims out there who need to connect with that part of themselves that we all have. So I hopefully we'll touch on some of those people.
I feel like, or my impression is that you went from victim to warrior because you said, wait a minute, these things didn't happen. And you then had to start becoming a champion for yourself, a warrior for yourself.
Yeah.
Now, it is possible that this is happening all over the place. Is that right?
Yes, I sent my manuscript to Elizabeth Loftus, who is a PhD and is an expert in false memory. She determined that she wanted to write a blurb for the back of my book and told on the blurb that there are thousands of people who have experienced this. And when I heard that, I thought, I really need to do this.
There's the back of the book, by the way. Now, and by the way, I couldn't help noticing that you got your master's in clinical psychology. Good for you.
I did. I went back to the school at 50, but I was going to school during the whole time this trauma was going on. So I'm amazed that I got through it. Yeah.
Joy, we're hitting the end of the time. I could talk to you for hours, but they cut me off after about 10 or 12 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to read the book. Then I want to have you back again because this is just fascinating. And what is fascinating or scary is there could be a lot of this going on out there, and people need to learn. People who are vulnerable and are victimized, it sounds like they're likely to get victimized again.
Absolutely. We tend to run ourselves towards people who will victimize us.
Joy, I encourage everybody, by the way, at Amazon, there's a lot of information there that I read and gleaned about you and your book. And you can even read part of it right there on Amazon, which was very cool. And the Amazon print is, well, actually, this is pretty big print, too, in the book. I like that, too. I appreciate that, Joy.
Yeah. Well, us older people appreciate
Not
that.
that we're older, Joy. Not that we're older. We're just can't see as well. Anyway, Joy, we're out of time. Last things you want to leave for our viewers about you or your book?
I hope people will read it, of course, for two reasons. Because it's my story, and I think I have something to say, and because there are victims out there who need to know that they have that warrior within them, and they will connect with that and turn their lives around.
Well, Joy, you're an inspiration that you've come through this, and you're very smart and bright and articulate, and you're able to write this and maybe help some other people. So thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate
it. And for our viewers, I just went to Amazon, typed Joy Rocha. She's the first one that popped up. Very easy to find. Go to Amazon, click, and order the book. And thank you, Joy, and we'll be back with more Briggs on Books right after this.